I hit the right button, it'll help. All right, we are now live on YouTube again. Okay, we're going to now have our 2 o'clock presentation, which will be converting GWBASIC programs to run on Windows 10 by Mike Hembrey, KV0OOM, or as he likes to call it, KV0OOM. So, Mike, I'm going to mute everybody now and go ahead and mute everyone. So, accept yourself. And I'll unmute you, and you may go ahead and start and take it away and bring up your desktop.
Okay,
Mike, your audio and desktop are up, sir.
This is my desktop. It's not quite as fancy as one of them I saw earlier, but the KV0OOM, or the story behind that is I wanted a call sign that matched my license plate on my car. I've got an amateur radio vanity plate. Took several tries to get the one I wanted, but the car I'm driving is a 2014 Corvette. So I thought KV0OOM would be appropriate for license plate. I also figured if lightning hits my antenna, KV0OOM would also be an appropriate name for what happened. So that's how I end up with KV0OOM. If you see my license plate, Florida has a unique rule. There are no zeros in Florida license numbers, in the license plates. So that first 0 is actually an O on the license plate. I thought about putting a little black mark in the middle of the O, but then I thought that would confuse the police, and you don't want to confuse the police here. Okay, my presentation is not nearly as fancy as the ones I've seen before. It's hard to put a lot of cute pictures and stuff and drawings and sketches when you're dealing with programming language. Just not really much to offer. Can everyone see this okay? Okay, I saw somebody here do this, so we'll go with it.
Yes, anyway. Sir. Yeah, your slide.
Okay. Anyway, I found out being retired means looking for a new hobby because 11's not enough. I really do have probably that many or more hobbies between the microcontrollers. I've got a telescope, 8-inch telescope. One of my hobbies is driving my car, the Corvette. Driving it in North Carolina, by the way. And ham radio is a hobby. Building antennas is an extension of that radio hobby. So anyway, I started out with my license back in November of 15. The reason being is I could not get any Morse code to stick in my head. So I had to wait until they dropped the code requirements. I signed up for the technician license, studied for that, went over and took the test and passed it. And they said, well, okay, you want to test for the general? And they said, it's free. It won't cost you anything extra. And I said, but I did not study for the general. They said, but it's free. So I took that test and passed it the same day. And then roughly 3 months later, I took the extra exam over in Tampa at the TARC clubhouse. And the idea was I'll go over and I'll take this test and see what's on it. Then I know what I have to study and not worry about what I don't have to study. Well, it turns out I passed my extra on that run. So the book I ordered that had not come in on extra license arrived a week after I got my license. So anyway, do want to point out that I'm really not that smart. I had 5 years experience as a classroom instructor teaching electronics, United Electronics in Louisville, Kentucky. I don't know if any of you heard of it, but when you teach electronics for 5 years, all the theory and all the schematics and everything sticks in your head. At one point, I was actually able to draw a 5-tube or 5-transistor radio, complete with parts values from one side to the other. You know, I had done it that much in the classroom. If you're a basic program,
Hey, Mike,
yes.
Mike, you got a little echo in your audio. It sounds a little bassy. I just wanted to let you know that, okay?
Okay, I'm not sure why, because it's a computer. It's the same we were doing last night on testing.
Okay.
It might
Very
be,
good.
might be your internet connection too. If you're a basic program, I'm sorry.
It sounds acoustic. So yeah, it's an echo definitely local there. Just want to let you know.
Okay. There's many dialects of BASIC. If you're a BASIC programmer or actually any other language, you know there's multiple dialects or versions. The ones listed here, all except the Atari BASIC, which Daryl got on me about for not listing. But there's a link down here. You can look up what BASIC is and some of the history. And I'll have another link later on. I believe I included it with what I uploaded to the website. And it lists, I'll tell you about a PDF that lists all the dialects of BASIC everybody ever heard of. Primarily, we're dealing with GWBASIC and PowerBasic as a tool to make executables. GWBASIC, primarily tokenized, which in plain English, it stores bytes instead of the program code like you see in text. And one is it tends to condense a program, but the primary reason is it was a means of pre-compiling the code so that it will run faster, because interpreted BASIC is irritating at the least as far as speed goes. If you copy a program out of a book, like I did out of the antenna compendiums from the ARRL, you won't have any issue if you type it in yourself, which sucks, except the possibility of typographic errors, which is pretty common. Problem here, or what I've dealt with, was getting, when you get a text file that's tokenized, like from the internet, then it's not person readable. Some of the programs that I was after primarily was working with loading coils and coax traps for antenna work. But you can see there's other applications for the programs. This list came out of just the ARRL antenna book, that programs that you can actually type in. Conversion options for Windows 10 is one is you can use a program called DOSBox, and that allows you to actually run old legacy DOS programs in a window. And one of those programs is the GWBASIC executable program that came with the early version of Windows, DOS 6.2, Windows 3.1, and DOSBox allows you to run those plus other programs. There's also a product called PC Basic Emulator. I believe this one is free. And it emulates GWBASIC running. So you can run GWBASIC programs, but the PC Basic Emulator does not run tokenized programs. Oh, sorry. GWBASIC executable compiled for Windows. I saw a reference to this, but I never did try to download it or use it. It was actually a GWBASIC.EXE file that is a Windows program. That one made me nervous. if you run into a tokenized file, and you'll know it because when you try to look at it in a text editor, it's going to look like it has a lot of garbage in it. If you're using DOS or Windows 3.1 computer, you can save the file from GWBASIC using save file name, comma A. A stands for ASCII. And you do this and it will save the file as a plain text file. Then you can also save it in any name you want to apply to it, even the extension. If you use .bas and you're still in Windows, it's going to try to associate that .bas file with whatever runs BASIC. And you may or may not have anything on your machine to do this with. The tools I use is GWBASIC.EXE, which is the original GWBASIC that came on the early machines, and run it on a Windows XP machine. GWBASIC did not come with Windows XP, but I learned a long time ago that you can download a copy from the Microsoft site and load it on the XP machine, and it will run just like it was on the earlier machines. The PowerBasic PBCC, or PowerBasic Console Compiler, is a command line compiler, and it's also a Windows compiler, which is the way I use it. You actually put these GWBASIC programs in the window, do some editing, and you can be up and running with a Windows executable Windows 10 file. If you're familiar with BASIC at all, you may have heard of TurboBasic, which was Borland, the same people that created Turbo Pascal. And if you played many games on old PC games, the early ones were actually compiled with Turbo Pascal because that was the only thing fast enough to make the programs run decently fast. And PowerBasic, Borland sold off PowerBasic. I think it sold again later, but the generation they have now, PowerBasic is a Windows program. So you can actually do create Windows programs using basic syntax, PowerBasic's basic syntax, or you can do compile programs that you already have and just create executables. The PBCC will not do DLLs or objects of that nature, plugins, but it will, the PowerBasic for Windows will do DLLs if you want to create a DLL for an application. First thing you do is you compile the file and check for errors. If you get an error 484, which I'll just demonstrate this at the end of this PowerPoint presentation, you must add a function pbmain or winmain at the start and end function at the end. This is a Windows requirement. It's not a PowerBasic requirement. It's a Windows requirement because that's the way Windows is designed. If you have the LPRINT or print commands in the code, you need to add or modify them using the XPRINT command. And because these commands are DOS commands, and they're also direct connections to the hardware through DOS. Windows does not allow direct connections. Everything's through an API in Windows. This is an example that you would put in your program. You basically clear all the error messages. You tell the computer to connect to your default Windows printer. You could also put, instead of the default, the name of the printer that you want to connect to in case you have 2 or more printers. And you test and see if it's actually a good connection, and you either say yes or no. Oops. My bad on this thumb wheel. Read data takes most of the work most of the time, not counting error fixing. As you can see here, look at the format of the read string, and a little bit, it just gets moved around a little bit. I didn't have to actually do hardly anything to it. except read. I had to add the $sign to the read statement, move the read over, and boom, we're fixed. String and numeric data can be mixed in the same line, but you have to be very careful forming the reads in the loop statement. It gets messy. It's probably better if you just keep each data line with either string or numeric, but don't mix them up. And eventually you will see compiled succeeded at, and it'll show the time, but you are not done. You still have to run the program. You can double click the program or drag and drop on the EXE because it is a Windows program now. This means you can create one program that will process others and just use the Windows drag and drop onto it, and it runs just like a standalone program. Unfortunately, now we're getting into some of the things we're going to run into. Program file name routines assume the old programs assumed an 8.3 file name convention, which appears relevant when using file IO operations. If you have spaces in the file name, the old format could not take spaces. So things will change a little bit on you. We'll get into this a little bit later. Also, you can count on a program with a program showing off as newly learned keywords. Right, Daryl? He's not listening. For example, they may use something like mid-string where left string was more appropriate. Decoding what they intend can sometimes be, and I used very interesting but difficult is probably a better choice of words. And if you're a basic programmer, you're going to go a lot farther when modifying his programs to run. Sometimes the code does not work as expected or desired, and you have to decide if cleaning up is worth it. Should you cut your losses and run? For me, it becomes personal. When I run into a program like this, I like to think I'm smarter than a glorified calculator. For example, and this is what I spent some serious time on, I eventually discovered command string returns a file path with quotes. And I expect this because this file name location was including spaces. And when I used the Windows drag and drop, it dropped it in and when it got to the file IO, where it actually worked up a file name to open a file for output, because I was converting an input to an output. And I missed 2 clues with len, which I did not notice. And then also when I print out the results of the variables and stuff, I did not pay attention to those real close. And you can see it cost me about 2 days work. If the program was converted tokenized basic to ASCII text, or if the program was to convert tokenized basic to ASCII text, that program is the one I'm describing. And once I got through the file IO issues, I learned the program was reporting token errors. But basically, it would tell me that a certain code was not a legitimate token. And so I would call that an error. Well, I'd already created an ASCII copy of the program, already did a conversion using my old XP machine, and I knew the program was correct and the program and the tokens were okay. Otherwise, it would have blown up on my XP machine. So I knew what the output should look like. I may return to this project, but I know it will be a lot of work, basically because I have to find out what version of BASIC that thing was written in, and then find the tokenization table for that particular version of BASIC, and then fix my data statements to adjust for that. And then sometimes figuring out what the original program's code was supposed to do can be a real issue. If you're outsmarted, it's a coding issue. If it's aggravation, it's a programmer's code issue. And with my experience with BASIC, I get mostly programmers driving me nuts with stuff that they write. Okay, now we're pretending what I did worked. I'll actually be demonstrating some of the stuff later, but we added a PB main or Win main. I've choose PB main because I'm using the PowerBasic compiler, and it's not a Windows program per se. It's just a Windows adaptation or a DOS program running in a Windows. So I don't use Win main. Then there's those pesky LPRINT statements. Ooh. I'm gonna quit using that wheel. That's messing me up. LPRINT's a DOS function, and any DOS function where you're dealing with hardware is basically hard coded into that hardware. If you see LPRINT, that means you're gonna do some code edits. Now, Windows, like I said before, is API driven, so being linked to the hardware doesn't count anymore. First, we tell the program how to connect to the Windows printer, and then we test for success. If error equals 0, if you're a programmer, you already know what that means. The part here for len XPRINT $string, this is the XPRINT command. This actually goes out, the XPRINT string goes out and gets the name of the Windows printer that you attached. So if I did a print X string, doing an XPRINT X string, print that, it would actually print the Windows printer that I'm connected to. Here it's just simply testing if there's more than one character, or if there's one character or more, it says, okay, it found the printer or something, and it'll say printer working. Otherwise, it'll say no Windows printer found. Now, anytime you have an end statement in this application, when it ends, it goes back to the window desktop or whatever application it's sitting on top of. You won't see whatever happened. So I always put, before every end statement, I always put an input and then some kind of message. And the ACK string is basically just a variable. It doesn't mean anything. Now, if we want printer output, in my first program I tried to convert had printer output. You have to change your LPRINTs or print keywords to XPRINT, and you're pretty much done. You can XPRINT, you can tell it to hook up the printer, and then XPRINT your strings, and you're good to go. I convert the LPRINTs to XPRINTs, but I make a second copy of the print statements, but print to the screen, because I want those to show up on paper too. So I turn those into XPRINTs, this second copy, and then I edit them for a pretty printout, because printing on the printer and printing on a screen is really two different animals. Reading data is a text command. There is no read of numeric variable, it's read string, and it's always text command. It is best to keep the numeric data separate from the string data. This is what I was saying before. It gets a little messy when you start mixing them, like reading 2 or 3 variable types in one pass of the for and X loop. I started out on a TRS-80 level 2 machine, and once I got away from that machine, I barely used data statements, not because I did not know how, but because I had I/O stuff like PC I/O, input, output, so I just read them from a file instead of typing them in. These should be your last 3 lines if you're XPrinting or using a line printer, or I should say a Windows printer. Whether it's a line printer, laser, or jet, doesn't matter. The XPRINT form feed is to flush out the print buffer to make sure there's nothing else left. And then XPRINT close is basically disconnecting from the printer, and then your end function is your Windows end. If you need a copy of GWBASIC, like I did, you can download it from here, this link. This is where I got my copy because WinXP did not include it. And I could not find it on the Microsoft site. After a certain amount of time, when they say no longer supported, that's exactly what they mean. They remove information and remove files so they don't have to support it. Information on detokenizing the Microsoft version of BASICs at this file or this location. And Edmund Rignac Pages Person Orange or whatever, if not France. I believe that's France FR. Anyway, that's where you can find information on the tokens that are used by different BASICs. You want to check the syntax of BASIC, the true syntax of GWBASIC, then the second link is a place to find that information, and it's pretty comprehensive. I mentioned the hex editor. If you use, you can use Ultra Edit, or you can use HD or HXD. I prefer Ultra Edit. I'll be actually demonstrating with it in a little bit. But both cases, these are free products. And Ultra Edit is interesting because if you put your code in a window and look at it in an ASCII mode, then you'll actually see it color coded according to whatever rules you set up. You can have color coding for BASIC in Ultra Edit. Then you can have color coding for binary files and color coding for C files and .h files and so on. So if you're a programmer, this Ultra Edit's a pretty nice product. And as far as I know, it's still free. I'm just going to let you read this one. Do you need a hex editor? Basically, you don't need it, because if you try to list a tokenized program in a text editor like Notepad or Notepad++ or Windows, it's going to look like a lot of garbage along with some text. If you look at the first byte in a tokenized file, it will be FF. And if first byte will be an FE if it's a protected file, and no, you can't change the first byte, so you can unlock the file. The first byte is just an identifier to the GWBASIC application, so it knows what to do with the program. Peek and poke. Right here it says forget it, that's it. Peek and poke are hardware commands, not Windows or DOS commands. They're hardware. You poke straight into memory locations. You tell it what memory locations and so on. And they're very, very DOS and hardware specific. If you see these in the program, just throw the program away, delete it or whatever, because you're not going to get anywhere with this thing. They decided to use things like checking the printer or running something a little fast or whatever, and it's just there's no solution to dealing with peek and poke application or in the application. If you can't resist the need for speed, another feature of PowerBasic that allows inline assembly language. Write code for assembly and tell it that it's an assembly language subroutine module or whatever. And PowerBasic will include them. And you can take and speed sections of your program up if you're writing the program in BASIC. I think I read somewhere that 80% of the program is running, or takes 80% of your program runs at about 5% of your time. And all the rest is fluff. So you can speed your program up by going to assembly language. or if you like assembly, it's a good place to play. If you look at chokes, coax chokes and choke coils and stuff, the AC Buxton is you're gonna see that a lot. This is what got me started because I found a program online for a coax choke for even having multiple chokes at an antenna. And anyway, that's how I got started on this project, or what led me into dealing with it. Now I'm having trouble finding more programs, legacy programs, that I can play with. You see my Amateur Extra is my title. This KV0OOM.extra is my email address if you want to email with questions. I'm old, but I'm not an old timer. I've only had my license a few years. Google's your best friend, and retired and hobby poor. Hobby poor means all 11 hobbies, 12 of them now. I don't have enough money for all of them. That means I don't have enough money for any one of them either. If you have any questions, now's the time for those. I'll have a brief software demo, about 10 minutes or so. Daryl, can.
All right, you may unmute. You can unmute yourself if you wish to ask questions at this point before he does the demo.
I can't be that good.
Apparently it is.
Either that or nobody can program in BASIC. That might be it too.
Well, to be honest with you, I'm going back to pickaxe basic now, and maybe writing a book on it. So for hams. So see, you inspired me, Mike, to go back to that and follow that up. See?
Yeah. You inspired me to start playing with the pickaxe too.
Yes, see, we helped each other.
Yep. I actually have microcontrollers of about 5 different brands. Some are like the pickaxe and the Arduino type. And then I've got one, Converson makes a compiled version of BASIC. It runs compiled BASIC, which makes it blazingly fast. If you want to, it's called ARM Basic, I think is the name of their BASIC. But
if you type that, Mike, can you put that in the chat, the name of that, so we can look it up?
Well, I'll add that to the list of processors. I figured that was kind of off subject.
That's all right. You just put it in the chat when you have a chance, right? When you get done, type that into the chat, because we'll have the copy of the chat log on the section website. After we're done, people can go back and look it up.
Okay, when I go back to my machine, get my desktop back, I'll look that up, get the true name of the file, the application, the processor.
Gotcha.
I should have a link there too to go with it.
That would be good.
Okay. Now we get into a little bit of show and tell. These screens that I'll be showing you with these applications. Man, get that thing out of my way. I can't see my links. How do I move this thing at the top so I can see my shortcuts? Oh, wait a minute. Oh, I can't see my Ultra Edit. I see Ultra Edit. Oh, never mind. I can see them. I can see the text. That's good enough. Okay, this is the Ultra Edit application, and I'm going to load in 2 files. One is a tokenized file, and the other is a standard text file. I'm not sure which one's going to be first. Oh, my bad. I moved the files. Please be tolerant of my foolishness here.
Take your time. It is what it is.
That was a tokenized. There's the untokenized. This is not necessarily the same file, but it'll illustrate what I was wanting to tell you about. In Ultra Edit, you can see the color coding, which is what I set up a long time ago. And you can have your keywords stand out, your text stand out, and so on. Makes it easier to work with a program, with a program that you're using an editor to create your program with. When you go to a program that's tokenized, it'll look like this. Or let me show you what it'll look like in your text editor. That's what you're going to see. You notice all the garbage stuff in here? If you load it in and you see anything before characters, characters you can read, you see stuff like this, then you know it's a tokenized file. We want to show that even though the file is tokenized, the text is not. You see here, through here, you see the text is here in regular ASCII codes. There's that FF, or it could be an FE. You'll also see in a tokenized file, the end of line markers are 0, 0. So you won't see a 0, 0 in an ASCII file, because that's a 0, 0 is a null character. This is what the ASCII looks like. And if I look at this one, look at it as a hex, you can see that first character is an apostrophe. It's not a bunch of goofy stuff. This is all man-readable code over here, and you can see over here exactly what it is. And that's my demonstration of Ultra Edit and a text editor, which happens to be a feature of Ultra Edit. Now we go to the fun part. This is a PowerBasic program. And as you can see, the original program was to read BASIC that's saved in binary, which is tokenized, and convert it to ASCII text as an output. And it comes down here and you open it up. Right here, you open the file up and look at it. And then you turn around a little bit later and you, somewhere in here, you put the file. Anyway, that's in there somewhere. And by the way, this stuff right in through here, this stuff here is to read in the tokens and or read in the tokens from data. So what it does, it goes out and gets this information, and these are the keywords it's going to plug in for the tokens. By the way, one token can be 4 or 5 letters long, so it saves file space as well as improves speed. Now what we're going to do now is compile this one to see what happens. That's what, just load your file in once you get it in a text form and compile it, and you'll see something like this. And yes, it is that fast. And down here it says statement expected. And I do wrong. Yeah, I did wrong. I skipped a step. Right here, one I should have brought in was PB main, and it was missing this, but it'll tell you the statement expected, and basically you figure out that it needs the function wrappers in it. But in this case, this program is in the read data section. You can see, if you remember what the format looked like before, this read data structure is wrong, because it should have something equals read $, ... So that's what it's telling us is wrong. So we close that and make our edits, and we end up with PB main. We think we fixed our data statements. Let's compile again. And it tells me statement expected. And then it shows me, it tells me what line it's on. But it also puts the cursor at the error point. This is not always going to happen. Sometimes an error mark or the cursor may be somewhere in the line that's not actually relevant to the error, but it does get you in the line where it went south on you. So anyway, in here, we take the read, and when you run this thing, it automatically saves a copy of your work. Okay, so now we're somewhere else. And this was another version. All of these changes or things I'm doing are shown on a PDF file that I included. That's a Word document. Right here, I've never seen any dialect of BASIC that allows you to use the input statement without assigning a variable to it. So I have no idea what version of BASIC this program actually came from. Daryl, is this Atari BASIC?
No, it's not Atari BASIC, that's for sure.
Yeah. So
it's been 40 years since I programmed in it.
Well, I'm programmed on and off in BASIC, but what I learned real early was the input statement had to have a variable to input to.
Oops.
So anyway, once I hit that, I plugged in a variable name, just have it input something, and then compiled the program, and I went on. And that got me to the point where when I ran the program, the program told me that it had invalid tokens when I tried to run it. That was in program debugging itself. The program goes through and it says, okay, let's let this byte. If we look it up and we can't find it, then it must be wrong, be a bad error code. I mean, up or bad token or a hex byte. And I knew already my stuff was good. So at that point's where I stopped. And for the last piece of my demonstration, this was what I run into earlier. And right here, A1 string gets the variable name of the program that I dragged over and dropped onto this program. So I did a drag and drop, and then I read the program name with the command string. Okay. And here is testing if command string is empty, then empty and it'll end the program. I had no intentions of it ever being empty, so I did not bother to make it an input instead of a print, because right here the program will drop right out of your window and you say, wait a minute, why did it quit? With going down, I used a 3 and then I did a print the string as a test, like a diagnostic test, and 3 didn't work. And I saw that's not getting the whole, getting the whole BS. And I put in a 4 and it did it. And I said, oh, okay, I solved it. I should have stopped right there and said, that's wrong. That is way wrong, because the 3 last characters on the file name are the extension. And that's what I want to cut off. I'm going to pull the extension BAS, take it off of the file name, and then add .asc to the end of the file name and use that to write it out as. Anyway, that's the part that gave me about 16 hours of unnecessary labor. And that's it for the game. Daryl, go away.
Yeah, my internet connection took a dive. I'm on satellite-based internet, and it decided to take a major dive on me. Good thing I made Randy the a co-host, or you'd have lost the entire thing, which I knew could happen. So pardon me while I'm trying to get my screen back up here completely, because it closed on me. Okay, well, if I can get this crazy thing to, oh, I love it when it does that. Now I can't get it back to full view here. So I'll go ahead and take questions this time. Let me see here. I got to get back into, great. Now it's all minimized. There it goes. It took me out of, there we go. Finally got it back. Okay. There we are. All right. Let me go ahead and unmute everyone. So now you may unmute yourselves and you may ask questions.
You gotta love technology.
Okay, Gordon has a question. Go ahead, Gordon, and ask away. You have to unmute yourself, but you should be able to. I'm sorry, I hit the wrong button there. I thought I had to check. Go ahead and try it now again.
All right, I think I got it working. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, my mistake. I turned it off and I should have had it on. Go ahead.
All right, I want to know what your other 11 hobbies are.
Well, driving my car. I don't think I'd have to list them on paper to give you all the 11. It's probably more than that.
Well, give me just a few.
One is I had a sailboat. I sold that. I had a 28-foot sailboat. I sold that. But then I couldn't be without a boat, so I bought a kayak / pontoon boat with a sail and a trolling motor and everything, and pretty neat little setup. And you can take it all apart and use the individual parts if you want. So that's a project. I'm putting up antennas. I've just got my 2-meter 440 antenna up, pointed south, so I could actually get onto the wormhole router. You see wormhole, and then in the process of putting up a 6-meter antenna, which I'm going to have to assemble out in the yard. I did everything else on my back porch, screened in porch, but I'm going to put my 6-meter together because the thing is 10 feet in all directions, except diagonal. It's probably 14 feet on that one. So I'm going to have to pre-assemble part of it, take it outside and put it up. Then I put it on the tilt. I've got a tilt up steel pole or a fiberglass pole for this one. And I tilt it up, and that's going to have a rotor, a TV size rotor on top of it. So that's my current project. Then I mess with microprocessors, quite a few different microprocessors.
Okay, Mike, let me make a, for those that have just logged in, will you please change your name to your full name and call sign? So that way we will know who you are, as I'm taking attendance as well. And thank you very much. And you should be able to rename yourself. If you'll do that, please. Thank you.
Sounds good, Mike. Sounds like you're having a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm going through now. I'll unshare this thing in a minute, but I'm going through now to find my microprocessors. It's a Quirks processor. And I don't know if I have a link to their site. I don't see a shortcut to their site. But anyway, yeah, it is ARM basic. It's the basic they use. And you can buy this chip for about $10. And it's a Z80 size chip. You know, it's a 40-pin chip. And the thing is blazingly fast. And, you know, it processes like millions of instructions a second and puts these other microcontrollers to shame. And I played with it a little bit, but not much. But if you have a need for high-speed data acquisition or high-speed sensor rating, this chip will do the job and some. And it's a pretty standard basic. It's not a lot of goofy keywords in there. It's CORIDIUM, Coridium. If you type that in Google, it should pull up the link for them.
All right. Do we have any other questions this time? Hang on. Yeah, that's the second person to call during this time. So, that's pretty neat. Okay. So that's your schematic drawing program then.
No, this was provided by Coridium.
Okay. I presume that take it that that's a commercial product that you have to buy.
Yeah, it's a $10 chip, but the software is free.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
that's very interesting.
You spend $10, you got access to everything. Just like the pickaxe and the Arduino.
you could drop in the links on the chat. That would be very, very useful.
Okay.
When you're done, drop those links because that wasn't in your presentation.
Okay, control is yours again.
All righty. Well, thank you very much for your presentation. If there are no other questions, we're going to end the YouTube stream. And so this video will be complete and give everybody a couple of minutes break, and they'll give me a chance to break and prepare the next YouTube video. So be sure to check the chat there. Unfortunately, when I lost my connection, I may have lost the chat and didn't save it. I hope somebody else may maybe still save it, and if all else fails.